You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This podcast episode is brought to you by Lonsdale Publishing. Is your program seeking ways to assess your students' college readiness? Does your program need a tool to document the effectiveness of your program? Lonsdale Publishing is excited to offer the Strategic Learning Assessment, a 20-minute online assessment that provides recommendations and strategies to improve academic performance across 11 learning areas: communication, critical thinking, effective learning strategies, focus and concentration, growth mindset, persistence, seeking help, sense of belonging, stress management, test preparation, and time management. For as little as $3 per student, the Strategic Learning Assessment identifies strengths and areas for growth, along with tailored recommendations for each learning area. Want a complimentary sample account for yourself and 5 students? Contact Lonsdale Publishing at 727-389-8026. Again, that number is 727-389-8026. Or visit our website for more information at www.lonsdale.com. That website again is www.lonsdale.com. Lonsdale Publishing, your partner in student success. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk Trio. This is Season 7, Episode 9. I am your host, Juan Rivas. Before we begin, I have some community highlights. Trio Nation, be sure to call your congressional representatives to defend the Trio programs. The Trump administration is seeking to eliminate the Trio programs in their most recent budget proposal for the coming year. Take action now by spreading the word and contacting your congressional representatives. Your voice needs to be heard. Let's defend Trio. In today's episode, we have Evelin Castañeda, Trio alum and project coordinator for the Latino Youth Leadership Project Incorporated. Evelin is on the podcast to share her own life experience, her Trio journey, college experience, her current role, and the impact she makes on her community. Coming up in just a bit, Evelin Castañeda. A heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Jeff Naputi, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lamaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, triojoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Longsdale Publishing, Student Access, and thetriostore.com, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for Trio graduation stoles. Thank you so much for your support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. If you own a business that serves the Trio community and want to sponsor this podcast, we have different sponsorship packages available. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast business PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. Your support helps lift Trio voices. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, or alumni to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring Evelin Castañeda, Trio alum, and project coordinator for the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project Incorporated. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Hi, Trio Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast is a first-generation student who graduated from the University of California, Riverside with her bachelor's in education and a minor in Chicano studies, and obtained her master's from California Baptist University in educational leadership and administration. She currently is the program coordinator for the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project Incorporated, but has previous experience serving as the Scholars Retention Specialist for Trio Student Support Services, and she is also a Trio alum for Upward Bound and Student Support Services. In her spare time, my guest enjoys card making, scrapbooking, exploring local parks, and being with family. Welcome to the podcast, Evelin Castañeda. Evelin, welcome.
Thank you, Juan. I feel very welcomed. I appreciate just being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, because this is our rescheduled episode because we were having internet connections last week. We were trying to get this thing started, and then before that, I think we've been trying to really see if our schedules can align for us to do this episode.
Yes. I was telling my sister, I was like, maybe it was something in that day that didn't want us to record because we tried. We tried a Teams meeting. We tried Google. It was a lot.
It was a lot, right? We were trying everything to get this episode recorded. Fortunately, now we have a very strong internet connection and we're able to do this thing. So thank you so much for giving us your time to record this episode.
Thank you. No, and as well for your patience and understanding, even if I came late today. So thank you.
Oh, no. You didn't come in later. It gave me time. So I'm in my office where the equipment's a little bit different. So I had to kind of rush, get a lot of wires together. So I appreciate that you gave me the time to do that.
Okay, perfect. I'm glad it worked out.
Fantastic. So how are you doing? How's everything going for you?
Everything's moving by so fast.
Yeah.
I think the year just zoomed by. We're already in late April. May's coming. My sister told me yesterday, Christmas is almost here. I'm like, no, it's not.
Who's thinking about Christmas?
I was like, please let me enjoy spring. Please let me enjoy summer before we get to any holiday season.
That is where I'm at, Evelyn. I think there's a lot of folks that are ready to rush to fall and winter. And us summer folks, I feel like you're a summer person. I'm like, no, let us enjoy spring and let summer get here because I want to enjoy summer too.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, there's no need to rush. The year went by so fast already. We gotta chill.
Absolutely. The pumpkin flavored whatevers can wait. Yes. We want to have our summer stuff.
Yes, exactly.
So now I understand that you recently moved to this new position. How are you enjoying this new job?
Oh, Juan, this has been such a new experience for me. Definitely a job that I always wanted, but didn't know I was going to have so early on in my career.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning so much. So with this new job, it's an education nonprofit, a statewide education nonprofit. I was an alum of it in 2017, so I do have some background information on it, and volunteered for it as well last year. And it's so interesting when you're part of a program and now you work for it because you get to learn so many just little in and outs, all the context of what's going on. And yeah, it's definitely a big role. I sometimes overwhelm myself as I'm learning all the new tasks I have to do. And also it's an inaugural position as well. So I'm doing a lot of that startup work,
Wow.
reconnecting with folks. I'm getting my own network since it's a small nonprofit. So like how can we get people to volunteer or if we need any speakers? So it definitely gives me room to grow as a professional, to network, but also to, I guess, rekindle old relationships, professional relationships that I used to have.
That's awesome. I know we're going to dive into your job here in a little bit, but I really want to get the audience to let them know that this is a new position for you. And it being an inaugural position, it comes with a lot of there's a lot of newness to it then.
Yes, no, yeah, definitely it does. And what's even more interesting, I would say, about this role is just me and my boss, right? So it's just me and her, and there's so much trust in this position. Like when I first started, I just went in blindly, right? I got the job, I was so excited, and yeah, definitely being new, I was just given all this knowledge on the program, on the organization, and yeah, being a new position, inaugural position, I'm just like, wow, this is a lot, but I'm taking time to just take a step back and process everything as it comes,
Mhm.
so that I don't get super overwhelmed.
Absolutely. What is something you want to accomplish in 2025? So we were talking just a little while ago that we're in April of 2025. For those of us who really want to enjoy the year, right? We're reflecting and thinking about what's still to come. What is something you want to accomplish in 2025?
Oh, Juan, for 2025, I want to get organized, whether that be professionally, both personally. But I think that would be the best thing that would happen in 2025. But
Uh-huh.
so far, my highlight would be getting this new position, right? I mean, I interviewed for this job in December. Well, actually, if I can just tell you the backstory of it,
Oh, go
I
for it.
applied for this job in November.
Hmm.
November 1st. I didn't know how to drive yet, Juan. I was like, and
Really?
this job was an hour away from where I lived. I'm like, it's gonna happen for me. It's gonna work out. So I interviewed for the job. It was a phone call. Then it was an after the phone call, that's when I had my driving test, and I'm like, I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass. It's gonna happen. I
Yeah.
passed. Luckily, I passed. January
Awesome.
2nd, I had my interview, drove on the freeway for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Got to the interview. I guess I slayed it because I got the job, Juan.
Well, congratulations also on two fronts
Mm.
because one, you got the job, but two, that you mastered driving and mastered driving in a freeway in California.
Yes. And now I'm taking the freeway every day. Yesterday I had a 3-hour drive back home from
Oh my
Pasadena
gosh.
to Riverside, and it was a mess. But that has been honestly my highlight of 2025, having this new opportunity to grow as a professional and to meet so many new people. And I think in a way also having someone that believes in me, right? My boss has been so amazing. She's a servant leader. She always tells me, Evelyn, don't just see me as a boss, see me as a mentor, which I think having a leader in that way is so important because not only do you have someone who believes in you, but also someone who shows you that trust. So from 2025, that would be a great highlight. And also, I adopted in April. So I'm officially a mother, and I guess that would be my other highlight too. My new job, a mentor, and I legally adopted earlier this month.
Really? Oh
Hmm.
wow. How's that experience for you?
It's been a while. It's been so wild. I started fostering last January, and it was crazy because I didn't give birth, so I got the baby on a Sunday and I went to work on Monday, and I got
Wow.
them at 3 months, right? But luckily my boss at Trio, she was so amazing. She listed all the benefits that I had as a professional, like as a staff member at UCR, and I was able to get 2 months off paid. So that was super helpful as I was learning to bond with this baby and
Wow.
care for her. So definitely was a new learning experience. It was a lot of responsibility, a lot of patience for sure. And I've had her for a whole year and now she's mine.
That's amazing, Evelyn. So you've
Mhm.
taken on a lot of responsibilities. 2025 is definitely a monumental shift. Earlier in the podcast, as we were doing your intro, we shared that you enjoy card making, scrapbooking, and exploring local parks. So, highlight one of those or all of them. What do you enjoy most about those hobbies and activities?
Yes, well, actually, card making and scrapbooking, I took that on during the pandemic. So we were
Hmm.
always, we were indoors a lot. We were on screens a lot. During the pandemic, I was a student. I worked 2 jobs virtually, and being a student, you're online all the time. So not only was I on Zoom calls constantly, but I was also doing homework. I was also, working, meeting with students in that sense. So I was a lot of screen time, and I needed to find something that allowed me to not look at the screen.
Hmm.
And through TikTok, I was able to, I was always into junk journaling, just like gathering all these different scraps and putting them on paper. But
Hmm.
seeing how people created so many beautiful layouts or just documented their memories through pictures and stickers and glitter,
Hmm.
that all
Hmm.
really caught my attention. So during the pandemic, I took on scrapbooking to just document like how life was going. And it's so funny because I was recently looking through my scrapbook and I have a I have a layout of like my COVID test. I mean
Hmm.
the COVID shot, the
Oh yeah, the card. Yeah.
yeah, the card. I have a picture of the Band-Aid and then also like my screenshot of my appointment at Rite Aid.
Oh wow.
I'm like, this is a moment in history.
Definitely something to keep forever. So all of that really built for you. And is it more and more like to archive and to remember or to display? Yeah, where does that fall for you?
That's a really good question. And I think for me, it was more of like that archive, right? Because I documented all of 2022. Like I was looking at it, and every single day of that year, I documented it. And
Hmm.
looking back, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like I can go back and be like, oh, this is where I was, this is what I did.
Hmm.
And I'm the type of person, I love physical pictures. So every month I try to print out physical pictures and delete them from my phone because I think it's so important to have those physical memories.
Hmm.
And then um and where is it taking me now? Like right now I took a pause on scrapbooking and card making
Hmm.
just because of the baby. I have more responsibilities and my job. I'm working more.
Hmm.
And I haven't had time to invest time to create, but it definitely has been so relieving of stress and it allows me to see something I create. And I love creating things. And I know with card making, I do a lot of happy birthday cards, get well cards, when we would have a new staff member at Trio, I would create a card for them like welcome to UCR. So it was always nice to see something that I create and give it to somebody or just see it displayed as is.
That's awesome. So
Hmm.
we're going to rewind the clocks just a little bit, Evelyn. Can you share a little bit about your upbringing? What was that like for you?
Yeah, Juan, it was tough as a
Oh yeah?
first gen low income Latina
Uh-huh.
from South Central. Definitely, I would say it was tough. So, um, I am one of eight, so I have seven siblings.
Wow.
I'm in the
That's a large
middle, raised
family.
by
Jeez.
yeah, there's a lot of us, but it's been a journey, and so I'm in the middle, so I'm the fifth born. I have four older siblings and three younger siblings. Grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Definitely, I would say where I grew up in my area, I was very isolated. I was reflecting back on this moment. I was
Hmm.
like, wow, I didn't know what a mall was. I had never been to a Target, never knew
Hmm.
what Walmart was. Like all of these big chain stores,
Hmm.
they were not available within my community.
Hmm.
And my mom didn't know how to drive, so it was public transportation. So I love public transportation. I mean, even up until last year, I was taking the bus and the Metrolink everywhere,
Oh wow,
right?
yeah.
So that's just a lot of where I am now. But in terms of my upbringing, yeah, I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, moved quite a bit, attended five different public schools, and I learned so much, Juan. Like as I reflect now in this moment, I was like, wow, being in so many different communities allowed me to not only network with different people, learn how to navigate different spaces, uh,
Hmm.
adapt to new resources, right? Like the bus changes, the bus routes, or learning, how to use a tap card, or it's just so. It was just a lot in terms of that sense of navigating new spaces and
Hmm.
meeting people and being able to
Hmm.
adapt and be flexible because things can change any time. So that was a little bit about how I was growing up, but it was definitely it was fun. I would remember a lot of fun moments, but also remember a lot of moments where I'm like, oh wow, like I probably shouldn't have been doing that, right? Parentification happens, and I used to take the bus by myself every day as studying
Oh
second grade.
wow. Yeah.
So and looking back, I'm like, oh my God, that's scary because I see a second grader walking in the street and I'm like, oh wow, like he's small, he's little, right?
Yeah.
So definitely like that was a lot of more of my upbringing is doing things a lot by myself.
Hmm.
But also having that from your mom, right? Like she had that trust in me, knowing that I wasn't going to do something wrong. So
Yeah.
on my end, it was like, oh, I can't mess up because she's trusting that I do it right.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. Nosotros Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, developments of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotros.edu.org.
And now back to the podcast.
So I like that you talk about your mom because here's the point where we can talk about your family in its entirety. What was that dynamic like for you and for your family? Having seven other siblings, I mean, that's wow. Can you talk about that dynamic?
Yes. This is a great topic because me and my sister, um, she's 3 years older than me, but we dissect our family dynamic a lot now that we're older and we're able to process a lot of our childhood. But I would say when I was growing up, it was definitely a fun moment. We were pretty stable between the times when I was in elementary school and we didn't have any internet, we didn't have phones. It was literally just rocks and dirt and a ball. I remember my mom had bought a video camera and we would just create movies and it was a lot of that old school fun, right? Old school
Hmm.
play of just
Hmm.
being outside in the dirt. My mom would take us to local parks a lot. So this moment in time that I'm talking about, it was only six of us, right?
Uh-huh.
My two youngest siblings didn't exist yet, weren't born yet. And it was fun. It was just my mom, we would go to local parks a lot. We would spend a lot of time together. We would help a lot of chores. And then once my two younger siblings came into play, we moved from that South Central area into the city. So we were outside of the city of LA. And I would say that's when the family dynamic was harder
Hmm.
because we all lived now in a smaller space, very close together, right? So
Hmm.
typical immigrant family, 14 people living in an apartment, one bed, one bath. It was so tough. Because sometimes you can get irritated or stressed out with your family.
Sure.
Where's your quiet time? And I think it was during that time of
Yeah.
middle school and high school where I fell in love with the library. Like I would just tell my mom, I'm leaving. And I'd spend like 2 or 3 hours at the library
Yeah.
to just get that alone time, that privacy of being by myself and not having to be with my younger siblings or my nephews. And um, that family dynamic we're very close, but I think we reached a point in our time where we're like, okay, maybe we can be away from each other for a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think that happens in several large families, right? Where, and I'll just use my family as an example. My siblings and I, pretty close growing up. Uh, it was like a three bedroom, two bath type of house. So it was very crammed and we were, so I have five other siblings. So a family total of eight. And we were very crammed, got to know each other very, very well. But I think it came to the point, and it kind of shows of where we're all living now. We're all kind of scattered around everywhere. Is that kind of what you're finding too with your siblings? Like you're kind of scattered out?
Yes, and yes. So this is a great question too, because I was the first one in my family to leave like the city, right? I
Yeah,
left
same. Yeah.
Riverside. So growing up, we were always very together.
Hmm.
My first oldest sister moved out very early, at a very early age. Then it was my second sister, she moved out
Hmm.
during her college years, and then we were all again together, right?
Wow.
And then for whatever reason, something happened, we were all back in the same apartment, all of us living together, which was really nice because, like you said, we got to know each other very well. And once I left, I think that's when everyone was like, oh, we can all leave too. I think it was like a moment of realization for them, like, oh, we don't all have to stay.
Right.
Like, like we can leave.
Yeah.
So after I left to Riverside, a few months later, my second oldest sister moved out with her husband. And then my mom, 6 months after I left, she's like, you know what? I'm gonna leave too. So
Wow.
she packed her bags from LA and moved to San Bernardino with my two youngest siblings, leaving behind my two other sisters, who was still in high school and one who was working.
Hmm.
So definitely after I left to college, everyone just kind of scattered. And that was the first time we were all not living under the same roof.
Wow. How would your
Mhm.
family describe you?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say definitely someone who's ambitious, right? And not afraid to just speak up and do something. And I think that's always been like a trend for myself is doing something first and then they follow.
Hmm.
Or I've constantly heard from my family like, oh, I wanted to do this, I didn't know how to do it, but then I found a way to do it. So then they would follow in that sense. And I think it's a very much of a pattern, right? Like I said earlier, I was the first one to leave, the first one to pursue college right out of high school. And
Hmm.
now it's become like that possibility for the rest of my family, right? My older siblings and my younger siblings now have something to say, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah,
So building up that trend of, oh, Evelyn did it, I can do it
that's
too.
awesome. Is school something
Mhm.
you enjoy, or did you find some resistance to it?
I always liked school, man.
Hmm.
I always
Hmm.
loved it. And I think this stems, I think, from growing up, like my upbringing, right, of being in a jam-packed house, always having to do chores, always having to translate documents, being with family. I always kind of saw school as like that escape, right? That of I get to be in a place where no one's expecting me to do something, right? To do a chore, to clean up, to translate. It was just like I'm here to learn, I'm here to listen, and maybe someone has high expectations of me to succeed and to mentor me and listen to me.
Hmm.
And and I think with school, something that I just found out recently was that there isn't a lot of Latino teachers, right? And
No, yeah, you find that out pretty quickly.
yeah, I didn't know that, Juan, because all of my teachers, elementary through high school, were Latina women, Latinos, and to me it was very, very normal. And I love that, right? Like all my elementary school teachers were young Latinas in their late 20s who really cared for me.
Hmm.
Middle school, they were also, in their 30s, Latinos who were able to relate to my story.
Hmm.
And then in high
Hmm.
school as well, I had Latina teachers who knew kind of like what it meant to be a first generation low income, right, from the city of LA, because that was also their story.
Wow.
So because I was able to relate to so many of my teachers, I grew to love it because they became sort of like I know who they are because they know who I am and they know my story type of
That's
thing.
wonderful.
Hmm.
Can you share your school experience in terms of like as you went through elementary and middle school, what was that experience like for you?
Yes, and that's a great transition too, right? So elementary school, I mentioned I went to five different public schools, but I went to two different elementary schools. One of them I was in a dual language program,
Hmm.
and it was amazing, right? Like I mentioned, all my teachers were young Latinas, and being able to speak Spanish with them was great. I now I see how that has impacted me as a professional because I speak Spanish interchangeably with my students or in professional settings as well. But elementary school was definitely so amazing, so many great resources and support. And then when I switched over to my second elementary school, that bilingual education stopped because it was no longer accessible, right?
Hmm.
It was no longer available in that school. And I believe it was during 2011, 2012 in LAUSD, there was like a pop-up of like 10 new schools, right? I think there was they built 10 new schools because of capacity. So I ended up attending a school that had just been built,
Oh,
meaning there
wow.
was new teachers, there was new administration. So everything was just starting, which is why bilingual education wasn't available. But
Hmm.
it was during that transition of schools where I realized like, oh, this is a completely different setting, right?
Hmm.
Like the students who are attending this school are not like the students I used to go to school with. It's just so interesting when you get to see like the dynamic of students that you're with. And I think I realized that at a very early age. Like I'm a very observant person. So I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, these students are able to behave this way. Like I didn't hear a bad word until I got to fifth grade. So
Sure thing.
and yeah, and these students in the second elementary school exposed me to so many of I don't want to like I would say like that they were in that rebellious stage, right? Of
Sure,
like
sure.
attitude and talking and acting out. And I think that's where I also started to shift into that attitude after.
Yeah.
Um, and then for middle school, I didn't go to my home middle school because we ended up moving deeper into South Central. So I went to a middle school where I didn't know anybody. And this was a predominantly a Black and brown school.
Hmm.
But again, I loved my teachers. They were amazing. It was a block schedule. I definitely learned a lot about myself in terms of like who my peers were. And again, the students in this school, in this new middle school, were completely different from the elementary school because these were students that were, I would say, more like me, right? Where we come from that immigrant background. Um, we were walking to school every day, taking the bus. Like it just felt so like community. That's what it felt like.
Right on.
And
Was there
then,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, sorry, continue.
Go for it. Go for it.
I was gonna say after middle seventh grade, we moved to the city,
Hmm.
and that's where moved to a different middle school, and that school was predominantly Latino, and it was so interesting because it was more heavily policed than the one in South Central.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was so interesting to me. Like, in South Central, we had cops on campus, and
Hmm.
fights would happen, and they have to break it up.
Mm.
But it was never super strict. So
Hmm.
moving to the middle school in the city, I noticed that there were security guards everywhere. Like
Oh gosh.
uniform was strictly enforced. If you were not wearing your uniform shirt, you had to go back home. It was just a very interesting shift of seeing that we were policed at a very young age. And I was like,
Hmm.
wow, like I'm not used to this because this is not how I was treated in South Central. So that was just like that dynamic of elementary and middle school where I was in a school where I felt very comfortable. And then once I had to switch over to a new setting, it was like, oh, something's different. What is it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is this dynamic that I'm realizing? And I think it's just, that community and the community definitely impacts who's going to be in those spaces, the teachers, the administration, the leadership. And yeah, I learned so many different patterns of education in
Absolutely.
that sense.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
In reflecting in your experience with school, was there a particular favorite subject or class that you really enjoyed and gravitated toward?
I would say no, not necessarily. I think I now have a very difficult, weird relationship with reading. I love writing. I've always loved to write.
Hmm.
Essays are my favorite. But I think reading was where it became pretty hard. I guess just like focusing was because I always had this sort of like anxiety of like, oh my God, they're gonna test us and I need to know this and I
Right.
need to know this and I need to memorize it. So I think writing was always my best subject because if I didn't know, at least I could explain it, right? Like for a multiple choice test, you need to know the answer. It's either yes or it's either right or wrong.
Right.
But for writing, you get to expand and truly elaborate on your knowledge. So I always really loved writing.
Right on. At this
Mhm.
stage of your educational journey, did you have any extracurricular interests that you added on to enhance your experience?
Yes, for in middle school, definitely I was more involved. So once I moved over to the city, in that middle school, I was part of their after school program where I was involved in their sports and also involved in their leadership, their after school leadership program.
Hmm.
And I learned a lot in the after school. I mean, I stayed because, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to go home to a crowded house, right? So I would stay after as long as I could. And the leadership team was so amazing. And even it was during the after school leadership program that I was able to go on Saturday field trips. So with that after school program I was a part of, they would take us every Saturday, every other Saturday to leadership development for youth.
Mm. Hmm.
So we would all get on a bus on a Saturday morning, go to a school in downtown, and just learn about professional development, what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a student, how to enhance, your own skills and what is college. And I think it was during those Saturday field trips where I was truly able to get to know who I was as a person,
Mm.
as a student, and meet people from different communities as well, because it was students from all over LAUSD.
Wow.
Hmm.
How did you and your family prepare you to transition into high school?
There was no support. We just went.
It was just register for classes and here you
It
go,
was
get ready.
just go. Yes. I think for me it was very different. So I mentioned I have four older siblings, and three of my older siblings all decided to go to a magnet school,
Mm.
right? So we lived in South Central at the time. They
Hmm.
signed up to go to a magnet school, which was in East LA. So that means that they would get a bus and that would take them to the school. And
Uh-huh.
the reason that they did this was because they felt that the school in South Central wasn't going to provide them with enough resources to succeed. So they
Hmm.
decided to go to that East LA school. Now,
Okay.
for me, since I live now close to East LA, I felt I didn't have to go to that same school that my siblings did, because it kind of became tradition, right? Like your sister went, now you go, now you go. But for me, I was hesitant. I was like, I don't need to go to the same school that they went to. I went to my home school, which was a 7-minute walk, and I was actually the only one of like my middle siblings who didn't
Hmm.
go to Roosevelt High School. And they often, would tell me like, oh, why didn't you go to Roosevelt? You would have really liked it. You would have enjoyed it. But I think for me, I wanted, because I was always switching schools, I wanted to continue with the same group of students I had in middle school, right? Like
Hmm.
that same cohort and that same familiarity, just because I was tired of getting to meet new people and being in a new environment. Like, can I have something stable for once?
Something consistent, right? Right.
Yes. And I really liked my experience at Franklin High School. That's where I went. And I also think it for me, I went because I'm like, well, if my siblings went to Roosevelt, what didn't cause them to go to college? Like what was like, was there a barrier, right? Like what resources were they offered or are not being offered? So I also took that into consideration when I decided what school I wanted to go to. So I know you
Absolutely.
mentioned how did your family prepare? But I think I had a lot of freedom in that choice. It was either you can go to Roosevelt, you can choose another magnet school, or you can go to Franklin, which
Wow.
was a 7-minute walk. And for me, I just decided I'm like, I'm gonna walk the 7 minutes every day,
Yeah, that's easy.
you
That means
know?
that's easier to prepare too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your time in high school. What did you enjoy the most? And did you participate in any extracurricular activities that followed you into high school?
Mm, yeah, high school was I like my high school experience. I think I was definitely very involved. Um, Not necessarily with clubs or what was happening within my teachers or what was happening with my friends or even what was happening with community. And I was in high school during the 2016 presidential election, so that definitely led to a lot of community
Oh, for sure.
involvement and
Yeah.
yeah, that was a time. But yeah, so in high school, the very first extracurricular I was a part of was Upward Bound.
So
And
this is
I
where Upper Bound really came in for you.
Yes.
Wow.
And it's so interesting how it happened because one Upward Bound representative came to my homeroom introducing herself, what is Upward Bound? And I remember hearing, we're taking you to visit colleges for free. Like all you have to do is sign up this application, fill it out, get a teacher recommendation, and
Hmm.
you're in. And Juan, I remember being the only one standing up to get a paper. And I didn't know that, well, I did know that even just doing something on your own would cause you to not get bullied, but kind of like, get mocked at or laughed at. So me getting up to get that application, like I remember hearing all of these words like, oh, nerd, or just these things. I'm like, why? This is a free program.
Yeah.
Um, and now my sister, she's in ETS, she's in ninth grade, and she had that same experience as me. So I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, so there nothing much has changed, right? Of like how we're viewing education post high
Yeah.
school.
It's
But
interesting how various TRIO programs recruit students, right? Some of them will outright go, hey, come up here and get your application. Some of them will target students and they'll go out and visit them one-on-one. So there's a lot of responses. It sounds like TRIO programs should find an identify a way where it's not so like if we're going to recruit students who really want to be in this program, it should be a little bit more welcoming. That way it's not a peer pressure sort of situation.
yes, I love the way you put that because I was so close to not getting the application. And I think because I didn't know anybody in my homeroom, I was
Uh-huh.
like, whatever, these people don't know me. So
Right, right.
I felt more like just happy to just step up and get the application, right? Because I didn't know anyone there. But yeah, I think if it was definitely maybe like a tabling during lunch or after school, maybe it would be slightly more welcoming, or even like a information session at the college office. But yeah, that was when I first got introduced to Upward Bound, and it like changed my life in so many ways. I'm so grateful for it. And even through high school, like any other extracurriculars I was a part of,
Hmm.
um, I was part of the after school program as well with the after school leadership. And it was the same program that I was part of in middle school. So it was
Hmm.
just a high school setting. I was also I was part of JROTC
Oh,
for two
wow.
years. Yeah. And now as a professional, I went to a workshop on like military education, and it was like, wow, like it was a full circle moment because I'm like, oh, I experienced that in high school and I know what it's like,
Yeah.
I know what it looks like, and now I know its value, right? I was also I was a part of an after school program called Immigrant Justice Advocates.
Hmm.
So we would do workshops on knowing your rights around the school to different teachers, different homerooms, and yeah, those were just some of the after school programs I was a part of. I didn't really do any on campus clubs. Everything was mostly off campus.
Yeah. So I gotta
Mhm.
ask, you've given us a glimpse of like the type of student you engaged as. Can you tell us directly from you, what type of student were you in high school?
Uh, this, yeah, this is a good one. I was definitely that loud student who would not disrupt class, but mostly call out an injustice, right, or
Oh,
something that was
really? Yeah,
unfair.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'll give you an example. One of
Hmm.
my friends, she brought like a Gatorade, and my teacher was like, "Oh, you can't have this Gatorade here. You have to take it." And we were like, "What?" And everyone was just let it happen. And I was like, "No, this is so unfair." So I like jumped into to like interfere with this sense, right?
Oh,
And
wow.
I'll
Yeah,
also
yeah.
share, Juan, like during my high school years, I had a lot of friends who were part of the LGBT community, somewhere who were transitioning. And a lot of my teachers were very resistant to that. They were very, I would say,
Oh, yeah.
homophobic.
Uh-huh.
And for me, I just didn't understand why their identity impacted them so much. So when I would see that they were, unjust to my friends, I would be the one to question their behavior, right? Even
Hmm.
if that would cause me to get kicked out of class, go to the counselor, because I didn't understand why that impacted them so much, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that was definitely the type of student I was in high school. And once I got to my senior year, I definitely realized that there was that the education I was getting was so different to the education my peers in the magnet program were getting,
Hmm.
right? Are you familiar with magnet programs, Juan?
I'm a little familiar. They almost function like charter programs, I would imagine.
Similarly, yes. So in LA, magnet programs essentially is a program that students outside of the community can go into. So you know how redlining, you were only allowed to go to the school that you're a part of,
Right,
but
right, right.
magnet programs allow outside community students to attend that school under that magnet program.
Wow.
So you're not with students who are just in school, you're now part of that magnet program. But my school had that. It was the residential students and then the magnet students. And I realized that the AP English class that I was a part of wasn't getting the same education as the students who were in the AP magnet program.
Hmm.
And we only wrote one essay. I'm like, what? we only read one book while the students in the other programs were reading three or four.
Hmm.
Um, and I definitely saw this difference in my education. And that's where I got very resistant and very angry because I didn't understand why someone like me, who was very passionate about education, going to college, was not receiving the same support and resources as those in that magnet program.
Hmm.
Where it got to a point where my last 3 months of high school, I was very loud and vocal about how I felt. I tried to recruit my friends to feel the same way. A lot of them did, but
Hmm.
didn't want to do anything because they're like, well, we're leaving already. But to me,
Hmm.
it felt more of like, well, if we start this conversation, it can create change for the future generations, right? Or the future students to come.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it got to a point where I almost didn't cross stage because I was just so like resistant on like, communicating with my principal or communicating with the counselors. And I would say even like doing demonstrations during lunch, right, about how I felt about this. So that was the type of student I was. I was very much of an activist student and very passionate about just education in general because I felt we all deserve to have an equal education regardless of what program we're a part of.
Absolutely. And good for you for being an activist student because I think advocacy like that to bring attention to the differences in educational progress or even educational equity and access, that is important. And it segues beautifully to this next question. So typically a first generation student would find themselves either a step or two behind their other peers who are college going or already college oriented. And I remember this was my experience was when Upward Bound recruited me, I realized, oh shoot, I didn't even have a college list. I didn't have the tools to think about college ahead like that. At what point did you begin thinking about college, and did you talk to someone about going to college?
Yes, so yeah, I actually do remember when I first heard the word college, it was in my first middle school in South Central. They
Hmm.
actually had a college center.
Hmm.
And I remember I randomly found this place. I was in one of the hall because that middle school was pretty big. And I remember I was in one of the buildings and I
Hmm.
just saw an open door and it looked very lively. I walked in and I was like, oh, what is this? Because I was also a new student. I didn't know anybody. I was like, I can just be clueless. So I
Absolutely,
walked in,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, what is this office? And they're like, oh, we're a college office. So that's the first time I ever heard the word college.
Hmm.
And someone explained to me what that was. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like after high school, there's more. Like I didn't know that, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I think that was a great moment for me to realize what it was. And I think that's when I'm like, oh, like now there's something I can look forward to, right? Like
Hmm.
something I can pursue.
Hmm.
So it was so upsetting that I moved middle schools because they was gonna have college field trips and they were gonna bring college reps to that campus. So I didn't get to experience that. But once I moved to the second middle school, I didn't have that resource anymore. There was no college office, there was no college center. It was just, school. So then when I got
Yeah.
to high school and I met with Upward Bound, that's where I definitely like got that exposure to what college really is.
Hmm.
And actually that summer we dormed at UC Santa Barbara. So that's the first time I ever set foot on a college campus and met college
Wow.
representatives and just really understood what it meant to be in a campus that wanted you to be there, right?
For sure.
And wanted you to pursue that education and cared about your dreams and cared about your goals and your aspirations. And as a first gen student, I was like, wow, I wish my siblings got this. My older
Hmm.
siblings got this opportunity.
Hmm.
Or I wish my friends knew about this because once I did that summer program with Upward Bound,
Hmm.
I went back and talked about it to all my friends, all my friends, and I tried to recruit them. And
Yeah.
I tried so hard to explain, like, this is what college is, like, this is what they want. And it's so unfortunate that a lot of my friends who were also first gen students, who also come from single parent households, um, didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And whatever situation they might have been in, I really wish that they got it so that they can
Hmm.
also experience the amazing resources and opportunities that higher education has to offer.
That's awesome. So,
Hmm.
as you approached high school graduation, because this is a very important part of your life already, you're about to be done with high school.
Yes.
Did you have a list of colleges that you wanted to attend?
Yes. So with Upward Bound, we in California we do NorCal. So we would go up to Northern California and then we would do a Southern California trip. Almost visited all of the UCs, I think, except for UC Merced. And I did visit a couple of Cal States as well, and definitely some privates. So in California, I qualified for the fee waiver for the UC and for the Cal State. So I was able to apply to four for free
Hmm.
to eight free schools, right? Four
Wow.
Cal States, four UCs.
Yeah.
So I had my list and that's where I was also introduced to like the UC tier system, right? Where like UC Berkeley, UCLA are at the top, and then like UC Riverside, and it was just like that tier system.
Hmm.
So I did have a list, and my list was actually a lot bigger. But I remember when I was gonna apply to a couple of private schools, and I remember when I consulted with my high school advisor, my high school counselor, they looked very like, oh, you're gonna apply to that. I was gonna apply to Stanford. I was gonna apply to USC. I
Yeah.
was, I was
Yeah.
gonna apply to so many private schools. And when I shared that, I received more of a face like, oh, you're gonna apply to that school. And
Oh,
I think
like,
that's where
huh.
I felt like, oh, if he feels this way about me, maybe I shouldn't apply. So instead of applying to originally I was gonna apply to about 15 schools, I only ended up applying to nine.
Hmm. That's still
Um,
a big number.
yeah.
Wow. It's very impressive too. I think with first generation students, either they fall into the spectrum of once the Tree Upward Bound program is able to recruit them, they understand like what their college options are. My experience has always been, and I go back to my Tree Upward Bound days a long, long time ago, that even though I got exposed to all these colleges, there was only one college I really wanted to go to because of the closeness to my family. Was that
Mhm.
something that was in consideration for you too?
I wanted to leave. That was one of my things. Like I knew I wanted to move away.
Sure thing. Sure
And
thing.
yes, yes. And I think that comes with, being always so close to my family. But my dream college, I would say, was San Diego State University. It was
Oh.
just so beautiful. Even though I'm Chicana, Mexican American, I didn't experience a lot of culture in
Mm,
that sense. And when I visited San Diego State, I felt it. Like I'm
yeah,
like, wow, like I could probably really expose myself here to what it means to be a Mexican American, or even tap into my mom's, Mexican heritage. Just
absolutely.
because of the community that was there. And that was my dream college. I
Hmm.
unfortunately didn't get in just because it was one of the most impacted Cal States that year. Um, but attending UC Riverside allowed me to leave home, and it also offered me a pretty good financial aid package. So that became, like my next best choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you
Mhm.
talk about your high school graduation? What did that mean to you and to your family?
I think for me, I saw my three older siblings graduate. So to me it just felt like I have to do this. And unfortunately, I think for me it was a big deal because I did give a high school graduation speech. So I was
Mm.
really excited. I was super happy, super proud. But I think also being the middle child, my siblings were like, okay, wrap this up. Like, let's move along, right? So I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to really take in what that moment felt for me. And even now, as a professional working with high school youth in this nonprofit, we talk a lot about the high school dropout rates. I'm like, wow, like I surpassed this, like I should have been able to celebrate that moment more and maybe received a little bit more praise from my family.
Yeah.
But for my family, it was definitely of like, yes, you did it. Congratulations. Let's move on.
Wow, wonderful.
Mhm.
Before I move on to the next question about your college experience, I really want to emphasize the impact Trio Upward Bound had on you. So, from moment of recruitment all the way through to graduation, what did you learn from Upward Bound, and what were some of the services that they provided to you?
Wow, Upward Bound was amazing. I think the best thing I got out of Upward Bound was probably that mentorship. And as a previous trio professional, I see all the love and care that goes into these students, right? Like my trio mentors definitely cared. They would always ask questions, they would always offer guidance. And I think that's what I really needed at that time was someone to listen. And they definitely provided that space. So in addition to just being great mentors, just the field trips and the exposure to college was all I needed to really have an aspiration. And also like we over the summer we dedicate a week to career exploration. So many different stories I heard about different professionals, so many stories about like, people who are working in the medical field. And I was thinking like, wow, like maybe I want to pursue the medical field, or maybe I want to go and become a politician. And it was because of the networks that they had that they were able to provide us with that exposure. And I'm so thankful for Upward Bound because it definitely just provided me insight as to the possibilities of what is after high school. And for me and my family, and I know we're talking about dynamics, um, the dynamic for us, or like what was expected of us, was to graduate high school and go to work, right?
Hmm.
Because once we go to work, we're able to make money, and when you make money, you're successful. So
Hmm.
that was the path that my family expected of me. And I think when I joined Upward Bound, it taught me that that wasn't necessarily the only path. There's different
Gotcha.
paths that you can take. You can
Yeah.
pursue higher education, go to school for an additional 4 years, learn about so many other things, and then pursue your career, right? And I'm so thankful that Upward Bound taught me that, because if not, I would have probably, just gone to work.
Absolutely. So thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing that, because I think it's important for first generation students to know, like, yeah, Tree Upward Bound does a lot to prepare you, but ultimately you take the path, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Thinking about the semester or right before you entered your first semester in college, did you do any preparations like over the summer to prepare to set foot in college? Because and we're going to get to the University of California, Riverside,
Mhm.
but what preparations did you do in the summer to get ready for college?
One of the things I did was I think really take in my moment with family. I think being the middle child, and I was really close to my mom.
Hmm.
I tried in a sense to prepare them to be without me, if that makes sense. Because I did a
No,
lot, you know.
yeah, yeah.
I think for my mom, I did a lot of every time my siblings would go to school, I would do all the documents, emergency contacts. I would fill out everything that needed to be online. I would do her signatures. I would help my siblings with their homework and go to the store, and I would do a lot of like that work. So when I was leaving, I had to be like, oh, they're gonna have to do this without me. So I had to in a way prepare my other younger sister, like, okay, if my mom asks you to do this, this is what you're gonna do, right? So as I was preparing to leave, I was preparing my family to be without me. But for
Hmm.
myself, entering college, one of the things I was doing, I did a lot of research.
Hmm.
Um, I spent that whole summer looking at all the different opportunities available to me at UC Riverside. I know we're gonna get to that, but I watched so many YouTube videos. I read so many articles because I wanted to be intentional with what programs I joined at UCR, and how I wanted to engage as a student, and what I wanted to be a part of. So
Hmm.
I spent a lot of time on YouTube that summer.
So really researching and getting to know like what to get ready for mentally, and
Yeah.
figuring out like what college life would look like. I got a pause here, Evelyn, because I remember my own college experience and having to prepare. So and I'm sure you had a similar experience with Upward Bound had a bridge summer, right? Did you participate in that, like the transition before you get to college, or did you not participate in the bridge?
No, I don't think my Upward Bound offered that.
Oh, okay.
Instead, like the nonprofit that I was under, it had a college program. So after I graduated high school, we were done with Upward Bound. Like that was
Oh,
it.
so that was it. Like once you graduated from high school, it's like, all right, you kind of on your own.
Yes.
Wow. So,
So
yeah.
yeah, and I applied to their college program, and I had to interview for that because it was also like a scholarship.
Hmm.
So when I did get into that, I transitioned from my Upward Bound professionals to now the College Success Program professionals.
Hmm.
And they hosted, well, because my school started in October.
Hmm.
I had like 2 months, and everyone from the Cal State started in August, so I had like an extra month. They hosted workshops on like networking and socializing, and building your resume. So I participated in the workshops that that college program offered, which I think also really helped me prepare for my time at UCR.
Awesome. So
Mhm.
you chose the University of California, Riverside. What is it about this college that drew you to it, and what did you really like from it?
Well, I remember when I first visited this campus, one of a tour guide said the UC Riverside is the most diverse UC, right? And that really stuck to me.
Uh-huh.
And I think when I visited that campus, it just felt like, oh, I could be here. Like I got that moment of like, yeah, I could see myself here. Whereas when I visited UC Berkeley or UCLA, I always kind of felt like, yeah, these might be great schools, but I don't feel like I could walk these halls. Not necessarily because I couldn't, but more because I didn't feel at home or I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I could, just be there. So when I visited UC Riverside, I definitely got that moment of like, yeah, I could see myself walking here. It was a beautiful campus, so many
Sure.
grassy areas. The bell tower is beautiful. Um, and there was just so like every Wednesday they have a club fair. So I was physically able to see just how much opportunities were available to me.
Hmm.
And I think I really enjoyed that.
So let's expand on that. Can you talk about your time at UCR? What were your highlights and what were some of the things that you really enjoyed doing? Because I like how you gave this nice little like scratching the surface of UCR and what you liked. But let's dive into it. What were your highlights there?
Yes. My highlights at UCR, when I first started as a student, I really thought I was intentional, right? I spent my first quarter just being a student. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't want to participate in anything because I did so much in high school. I was like, I need a break. And it was also the first time I was away from family, right? So it was maybe the first time I was able to do things without telling my mom, just like going out to the store or like going to the movie.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to take those first 10 weeks to just enjoy my own solitude and my own independence. Whereas starting the second semester, I always wanted to get involved with Mecha,
Hmm.
Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, and my high school didn't have that. So I joined Mecha my second quarter, and that has honestly been my biggest highlight. It helped me so much with networking, organizing, involving myself with youth and high school students in the community. And even during the pandemic, we were still very active, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was one of my highlights. And then additionally, something that really prepared me for my career switch, right, was I was part of student government. So I was elected as a senator for my college. And I truly got to learn what it meant to write policies and read them and
Nice.
at the
Yeah.
horseshoe, and being in spaces where maybe people don't have the same intention as you, right? Or maybe their agenda
Right.
looks differently. So I would say that was also a very big highlight of my time at UCR because I got to truly decide like, is this a path I want to take? So before I decided I wanted to pursue education and become an educator, I wanted to go into politics and I wanted to become either a council member or a politician of some sort. But when I began being in those spaces, I'm like, oh, I don't think I could be here. Not necessarily because I can't, but I think just because the way I approach certain things, I was like, I think I would do better as an educator.
Gotcha. Yeah, certainly. But you
Mhm.
also found the Trio Student Support Services program at this
Yes.
time.
Yes, and that was by chance one. So
Really?
yes, at UCR, I remember so many people told me look for like in Upward Bound, they're like, oh, just check out Trio.
Hmm.
And I honestly didn't really know that Trio existed in the college setting
Hmm.
until in my orientation, someone, I don't know what he was doing, but he was in the room where we were registering for classes. He just said, you should join Trio Scholars. And I was
Trio
like,
Scholars. Uh-huh.
I just heard trio. I was
Uh-huh.
like, trio. And I remember after orientation, I went home and I looked up UCR Trio Scholars, and that's where I found the application.
Wow.
And I think it really just happened, I would say, by chance because, or butterfly effect, right? If he wasn't in that room, I would have probably never known about Trio Scholars. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely applied and I remember we had to do an interview and I lived
Uh-huh.
in LA. So I didn't know that the interview I chose was in person until like a few days before. So
Oh.
oh, how do I tell my mom to take me to UCR?
Yeah.
And that was also a conversation because I'm like, oh, like, can someone take me to UCR? But
Uh-huh.
I think it was also really nice because I went with my mom and two of my older siblings. And that was the first time they ever stepped foot on a college campus too.
Wow.
So going to my trio scholars interview, it was again super important for me because I got to be part of now this space. But I remember my mom, like she talks about it still to this day, like, oh, I remember when I went to UCR for the first time,
Oh,
and my
yeah.
siblings who got to experience what it was like to be in a college campus.
Absolutely. Before I ask
Mhm.
you this next question, can you tell us a little bit about the support that the Trio Student Support Services program at UCR gave you?
Yes. Yes, my first year at UCR, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, I love to be part of a community. We had an office for ourselves. And I've always felt that with Trio, it just felt like familiar, right? Like everyone who's in that space wants to be there. They want to talk about
That's
college.
true. Yeah,
They're passionate, because I think Trio is a voluntary program. So you decide that you want to be there. So every time
absolutely.
I would walk into that office, I was always greeted with a smile. I was always welcome. Someone would talk to me, right? Either if I knew them or not. And it definitely offered me that just community space. Now, when during the pandemic, I think I really missed a lot of that.
Mm,
So I was a student from 2018 to 2022. So the pandemic really took
wow.
away my last 2 years of college, right?
Mm,
Well, I would say the middle,
mhm,
sophomore year to senior year, but yeah, it took away a lot. And Trio scholars tried very hard to keep us still engaged. And I would still join the Zoom meetings and I would turn on my camera to hopefully build that community up, or encourage other of my peers to join and turn on their camera too. But what I really, really enjoyed were those 45-minute sessions that I had to
mhm,
do, right, with my
mhm.
advisor, because it was just like a little check-in update, like, hey, how's it going? How are you navigating the pandemic, or how do you need support? Do you want a double major? What does this look like? And they definitely asked thought-provoking questions that I probably wouldn't have considered if I didn't have an advisor.
Absolutely. You
Mhm.
majored in education with a minor in Chicano studies. I'm interested, and I'm sure the audience wants to know what led you to this path?
Yes. This was it's so funny how things happen because when I applied to UCR, I was a political science major.
Mm,
And UCR had a Highlander Day, which essentially meant like it was like a pre-orientation. So you would just come and explore campus. And
mhm,
I told one of my friends who also attended UCR, I'm going. She asked for a ride. So I
mhm,
gave her a ride along with my mom. And we get there and I was gonna go into the political science info session.
mhm.
It was so packed. Like the students were out the door lecture hall. Like
Whoa.
I was like, I'm not gonna be here. So I remember telling my friend, "Hey, like, what room are you in? I'm just gonna go sit in on your session." I went to sit in on her session,
Mhm,
and the dean of education came and gave a talk about what it was like to major. And everything that he talked about was what I wanted to do, right? Which is essentially like that community organization, working with community, supporting educators, what type of education that you can provide. So it was that moment where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a poli sci major. I want to be an education major because I get to learn truly like the impact education has on community, but
mhm.
also what resources are available and like the history of education in general. And
Right.
as I mentioned, and I'm sure that you've heard before, like education meant so much to me when I was in high school. So when I heard him talk, I was like, wow, like this is everything I'm passionate about. And he's just putting it into words. Like
Wow.
everything I felt, he put it into words perfectly.
Wow.
So after that Highlander Day, the next Monday I called UCR and asked to switch my major and they did it immediately. So that was that. And with
That's
Chicano
amazing.
studies,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it happened so fast. And then with Chicano studies, I was part of Mecha and I was in so many community spaces that I was like, I have to do it. I have to make minor in Chicano studies. I wish I double majored, but
Yeah.
it was a minor just because of the lack of classes that were available at UCR at that time,
Hmm.
the amount of professors. But yeah, Chicano studies, I think it was more of like my identity, right? And I fully embraced being a Chicana in high school, my senior year. And being in those classes, I truly learned like the culture, the importance of this identity and what it has to do historically, and who we are. And me being Mexican American from LA, like I experienced a lot of that Chicanidad. And a lot of my teachers were also part of Mecha. And to me, it just felt like a full circle moment because I was engaged with so many people who are Chicanos, who were in Chicano spaces, and just learning about, those conversations was healing in a way because I'm like, oh, this is what it means. Or I was able to put context into words.
Right on. Was
Mhm.
there a particular career you were aiming for with this degree? Like, did you have an idea of like, this is the career path I'm going to take because now I'm majoring in it? Or was it like you're just kind of going with the flow of like, oh, wherever this takes me, I'm going to go there?
I think that's a good question because even when I decided to switch over to education, I
Hmm.
just wanted to learn. And I don't think I fully thought about what career I wanted to take. I just really wanted to learn. And all my classes were so amazing. Like my professors, my TAs, um, were telling us this. And I think it wasn't until maybe my sophomore year, close to the end, I was like, okay, I think I could be a teacher. Right. And that was in my mind, like, I'm going to become a teacher.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
previously, even majoring in education, I was like, maybe nonprofit work is for me. But second year, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. And then during the pandemic, I was a peer advisor. So I'm like, oh, I could see myself being a peer advisor. And then my senior year, I worked at a high school dream center.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, I want to be a teacher still.
Hmm.
But throughout that whole time, I didn't even think about like majoring in a subject or double majoring because even if I wanted to be an English teacher,
Yeah.
I could have majored in English, right? But no, I decided to major in education. So I think for me, not having that support from or not knowing, I think it's the first gen thing, right? Like you don't know unless you ask or unless someone
Right.
tells you.
Right.
I didn't know what I needed to become a teacher. I was just like, oh, this degree is gonna help me.
Right.
Yeah. So with that degree, I was aiming to work at a high school space.
Oh,
And
interesting.
then, yeah, that's what I really wanted. And then when I got I know maybe we'll talk about my master's, but once I got my master's, I was like, oh, I want to be a principal now because I understand the impact that leadership has within high school settings. But with education, it was definitely working at a high school setting.
Talk about the moment you graduated from college. What was that moment like for you and for your family?
To me, college, I was so happy. And I think I was very happy to be done because the pandemic took out a lot from me. I was taking 4 classes every quarter. I was still doing all my work, still doing all my essays. And I just wanted this moment to be done. And I
Hmm.
felt like I couldn't really embrace the college experience because, we were stuck at home for so long. But graduating college for me was like, wow, I did it. Like I did it, right? Like I
Right.
finally
Right.
did it. The first in my family. I was super excited. And to me, it almost felt like my high school graduation where I'm like, okay, like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing I have to do? Like, and I couldn't really fully take it in. But I know for sure I was definitely proud of myself. And I wish I took more of a moment to sit down with my thoughts and my feelings to fully process what this meant for me.
Hmm.
Because even I look back now and a lot of my peers, they paused their education during the pandemic because it
Oh
was
yeah, yeah.
they're like, I can't do Zoom school.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I never considered that, like, wow, like how many people left their education because of the situation, but I was able to persevere and still continue, right? So I
Yeah.
really wish I took more of that time to just process. But for my family, I guess this also comes right with like being the middle child. It was like, okay, let's move it on. Like, not that it didn't matter, but to them it was like, okay, like just another graduation day.
Mm.
It's done. And even during my graduation day too, I remember my family was like, okay, where are we gonna go eat after? I'm like, what? Like, you guys want to see my certificate? Like, you guys want to see my degree?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
it definitely felt like just like a moment just happened so quickly.
Yeah.
But to
Wow.
me, I know that I was very proud of myself for being able to handle and navigate school during a virtual setting, a hybrid setting too, because in 2022, everything was going like the in person, but not. So being
Yeah.
able to navigate that, all while being away from family too, right? Not having that support system or your family support, was a lot. And I think now for me, it meant just being able to do that on my own. And
Hmm.
for my family, it was like, okay, yeah, she did it. Now this opens a possibility for us, but let's get it moving. It was,
Absolutely.
yeah.
What plans did you have as a career after graduation? What did you already have like jobs lined up? Were you still searching? Was there a process there?
Yeah, so when I graduated UCR, I was still working at the High School Dream Center, and that's definitely a job that I wanted to pursue because again, it was nonprofit work, it was working in a high school setting, working with youth. But I didn't really have like a career
Hmm.
in mind. I think I think when I graduated college, I was like, okay, I need to go to grad school. Like, I want to go to graduate school just because I did, again, a lot of research
Right.
on what graduate school meant,
Uh-huh.
what that journey was going to be like. And I was like, yes, I want to go. So I applied to grad school. I got in. So that was my plan after. But in terms of a career, I just knew I wanted to work, whether anywhere. I just wanted to get
Yeah.
experience
Get a job.
and
Yeah. Okay.
get a job. And I remember I applied to so many places. I thought I had a good resume, but no, it was definitely really tough. And one of the jobs I did have after I graduated, I worked with Upward Bound as a summer assistant. So I was able to help, during that summer residential program. But that's all I had. All my options were like open.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I want to highlight because at the end of your undergraduate career, you graduated, you've had some positions, and you've held various positions. Can you share some career highlights? Like, what are some things that helped you realize the direction that you wanted to go into in terms of your career?
Yes. I think so. One of the similarities that my jobs had in common was that mentorship. Do you work for a trio? What program do you work for? One. Sorry.
I'm an advisor for CSU
Oh,
Online, so I no longer work for Trio, but I'm still,
oh.
yeah, an
Okay, well,
associate
you're an
kind of.
advisor, right?
Yeah,
So, I
advisorship.
assumed.
Yes.
But it was that advising that I really, really liked. So when I was at UCR, I worked as a peer advisor,
Hmm.
and I I I remember connecting with so many first year students during the pandemic, and I was their not gleam of hope, but they looked forward to having a conversation with me because it was a check-in, right?
Hmm.
Like, oh, Evelyn, you're holding me accountable. Oh, Evelyn, I look forward to meeting with you because I wanted to share with you this, or I submitted my essay. So it was knowing that I was someone's like accountability factor, right? During the
Yeah.
pandemic. So I really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. When I worked at the high school dream center, I got really close with four students, and they would always come in when I wasn't in the office, to just check in again, like, oh, Evelyn, I wanted to share with you that I joined this club that you mentioned, or I submitted my application for this scholarship, or I looked into Upward Bound, right? Or I'm a part of this. And it was because of the knowledge I knew that I was able to provide to them that they felt like they had someone checking in on them. They had that accountability factor.
Yeah.
And when I graduated from UCR, funny, during our closing ceremony with Trio, I told my advisor, I was like, oh, like, you just graduated with your master's. Maybe I could take your job because I could do it, right? Because I was already
Oh
there.
wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, I said it as like a joke, but I also felt like I'm like, yeah, I think I could do this job with Trio if it just takes advising. I've been doing that for 3 years.
Hmm.
Um, I could do it,
Yeah.
right? And coincidentally, over the summer, as I was ending my job with Upward Bound, I got a call from the Trio director and said, like, hey, Evelyn, your advisor just left Trio. She got a new job.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Do you want to work part-time with us while we're looking for someone full-time? And that's where I transitioned into being a Trio professional, and um, knew that I wanted to work with youth or college students in that way of that informal mentorship advising. So I always knew that that's something I wanted to do.
So can you talk about that time in your Trio experience and as a Trio professional? What did you enjoy most about working with Trio? Because this was a full circle moment for you. You went from Trio student to Trio professional.
Yes, yes, it was. And I think this was so hard. That transition was really difficult for me because even something that I've always known about myself is I'm very passionate, I'm very optimistic, I'm very excited. I love giving students or just people in general, right, like hope and excitement and transitioning my energy onto them so that they also get that excited feeling.
Absolutely.
And I think when I came into the Trio office, it was going into like this cultural shift of change, right? Because everything that happened during the pandemic kind of wiped out the community that they used to have. So
Hmm.
now it was time to rebuild that community.
Hmm.
And when I started at Trio, everything kind of felt very, it is what it is. Like whoever comes into the office. Like we're not going to be chasing students to come in
Hmm.
or whatever.
Hmm.
But to me, I was like, no, like Trio is so important, like in students' lives. And if they're coming from Upward Bound or ATS, where there's just so much hype energy around being a Trio student, I
Hmm.
want our Trio scholars to have that same energy and feeling. So I tried very hard during my time at Trio to create that community. And I'm happy to say I did, because even now, my previous boss or my previous colleague mentioned that. But working at Trio as a professional was difficult because I was the youngest in my team.
Hmm.
And that has been a trend in all my jobs that I've had. I've always been the youngest one. So it was navigating how to become how to, you know, how to look like a professional while still being authentic to myself, right? Or not losing myself to
Absolutely.
fit this mold of professionalism.
And can you cover what is it the most, either your highlight or the thing that you enjoyed most about working in Trio?
Yes, at Trio, I was retention specialist. So I worked as a front desk, and I also advised 45 students, and I oversaw the peer mentor program. So there was definitely like a lot. And I think Trio definitely taught me how to multitask.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Um, and also like how to prioritize. So I'm so thankful that it taught me all of these skills. But what I enjoyed most was greeting students into the office. Every morning, every day when they would come in, I'd be like, "Hey, good morning." Where it got to a point that I knew all of my students by name. So even though I had a caseload of 40 students,
Hmm.
I still worked with all of our 140 students because they would come into the office or when they would do
Wow.
programming. So I got to know a lot of my students personally. I got to know them very well, to a point where I'd be like, "Hey, like why don't you update me on the scholarship? Did you get it? Or like you told me you were gonna go to this club meeting. How did it go?" And I knew them by name, and I think the students felt very comfortable and welcomed in that sense. Where I got students say like, "Oh, I have an hour before going home. Like I just came to hang out with you, Evelyn, right?"
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that when I was working at Trio, I was able to build this community of trust and welcomeness and openness. And I think that's what I really enjoyed.
You also pursued a master's program at a different institution. Can you talk about your decision to do this, to pursue a master's program? Because anybody would say, wow, more school. You're going to add more hours to yourself. You're going to keep yourself super busy. What was your decision behind that?
Yes, a lot of the people I knew professionally had a master's, I would say.
Hmm.
And I would always ask them like, "Oh, what was your master's like? What was it like?" And they always had positive things to say about it. And I also always heard if you get a master's, you'll be more competitive in the work field, right? So while I was deciding to pursue my master's, I'm like, okay, it was so late in the game, Juan.
Mm.
I graduated in May. I graduated in June. And it was April when I'm like, I want to go to grad school. So my grad school journey should have actually like initiation, right? Should have started as a junior where I can begin preparing for that,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah. Uh-huh.
And yeah, so I looked into so many different college programs, I mean, master's programs. A lot of them required letters of recommendation, which unfortunately during the pandemic, I was never able to build a relationship with my professors because, I mean, some of them also had their cameras off, right?
For
So
sure. Yeah.
it was really difficult to build that. And I also didn't feel like I knew any professors well enough to ask for a letter of rec.
Hmm.
But I found Cal Baptist University. Um, Luckily for me, the application was free. There was no essay. It was like just submit your application and based on your transcripts, we'll determine if you qualify. And that's what it was. And I know you mentioned a different institution, but I knew that I didn't want to pursue a master's at UC Riverside just because I wanted a new setting. So like this was the first time in my life where I'm like, maybe I need a little change, right?
Hmm.
I want to be at a new campus, new resources. And that's why I decided to pursue Cal Baptist. Also because it was an online program and it allowed me to work full time. So I was in a time in my life where I had to financially support myself. FAFSA was not coming in anymore. And I'm like, I need to work. So pursuing my master's at Cal Baptist allowed me to work full time, to be a student still, and then do school on my own pace.
Right on. So a master's program is so much more rigorous. At least that's been my experience as well.
Mhm.
How did you balance your time between life, school, and work?
That one was tough. Luckily, when I started my master's program and I also started working with Trio, but because I started with Trio as a part-time, I had off Fridays off. So I essentially had like a 3-day weekend. And I think that's how it would balance off. So and I wanted to be more of a student in my master's programs, like actually be prepared and consider everything. And because it was a topic that I was more passionate about and all the classes were very specific, I looked forward to my lessons, to my readings, right? So I think this was a shift in mindset too. Like I actually want to be here. I'm going into debt to pursue my master's. Like the least I could do is care about my homework and my classes. So I think me being in that mindset of like, no, I need to do well really helped me, but also balancing time. I was working 8 to 5, and then on Fridays I was off. That's when I would start a lot of my essays, my essay writing, and I would prepare everything previously. So yeah, it was definitely a lot. I think when I became a full-time professional at Trio, that's when it really got difficult because I'm like, oh, I have to read so many chapters, and this is what my professors are asking of me, or like my essays have to be 12 pages. I don't have time for this. But I think that's also where I realized I'm like, I could ask for help. I can ask for an extension. I should feel comfortable telling my boss, hey, I'm still a student. Can I please like come in late at this time, or can I leave early? So it was definitely also a moment for me to realize I could ask for help when I need it.
And you specifically chose a master's in educational leadership and administration. Why did you choose this path? Was there something in mind that you wanted to continue studying?
Yes. So as I mentioned previously, when I was a high school student, I noticed the lack of education. The lack of educational resources that I had as a student who was in a residential program. And I noticed how administration behaved, or, the responses that they had towards my, I would say my realization, right, of education. And I wasn't very fond of their reaction, or how they would respond to me. And even when I worked as a high school dream center, I went to work back in my high school. I've never mentioned that. So the high school dream center was in my high school. So not only did I experience administration as a student, but I also experienced them as a professional. And I saw this pattern of like, oh, why are these students getting more resources and not these students, right?
Yeah.
Or why are teachers in this program not getting the resources that these teachers are getting, right? Or a lot of teachers also confided in me and shared their experiences working under different educational leadership. And when I was reading Cal Baptist's description on educational leadership, I'm like, this is what I want. And it was amazing, right? Like I learned so much about different leadership styles and the importance that principals play in high school settings, but not only high school settings, in nonprofit organizations, and different personality styles. And I think because as a middle child, I navigated so many different personalities, and I have 7 siblings. I was like, I feel like I could do this as a professional, as a principal, maybe, right? Navigating different personalities, how to lead, how to become a leader, and make leaders, and get them to succeed too. So that's ultimately what made me choose educational leadership, was for that purpose of hopefully leading others to become their best selves too.
Did graduating with this master's program hold a different meaning for you that differed from your undergraduate?
Yes, it did. It really, really did. And I think it's because at this moment in time, my family was like, okay, she likes education. Or like she likes school. And I think that's when they finally realized like, oh, this really means a lot to her, right? So
Right.
even after high school, even after UCR, my master's was like, oh, this really does mean a lot to her. And I think my family also saw me in a different light as well, because it was like, oh, you're still choosing to go to school.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, wow, like I'm doing this all on my own. Like I'm really pursuing this master's for myself,
Yeah.
and because of my community. So my community, I learned so much in all the different community spaces I was in, that this master's was like, wow, I can do it, right? And I think in the community that I grew up in, a lot of people don't get out of it because of survival, or just financial means. But going back to the community I was from, I was like, wow, like I really made it, right? From here to here.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I really want to talk about your role with the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project Incorporated. What is the mission of this program, and how does this role fit within your organization?
Yes, so the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project is a statewide education nonprofit focused on promoting higher education to students, to 10th and 11th grade students all over the state of California, right? So one of their missions is to educate and expose students to college, community, culture, and career through
Hmm.
the means of summer leadership camps, so summer leadership conferences. And these take place at, UC Riverside, Cal State LA, Fresno State, Berkeley, and Sacramento State, right? And students from all of these different areas get to just come in and learn about leadership, what it means to be Chicano, activism, local government. And it's just amazing because it's like a full circle of like all of these great things that is gonna prepare you to be a citizen, right? Like someone in this nation. I was gonna say an American, but essentially just like a model citizen, so
Hmm.
that you know your place, right? And how does my role fit within the organization? So again, it's an inaugural position. I'm the program coordinator, and I oversee all of these programs.
Hmm.
And since we have been volunteer run for the past 43 years,
Wow.
I'm now overseeing our volunteers and assisting them with designing and developing the summer conferences.
You must do a lot of outreach in the community then to like really form these relationships and keep the program strong. What have you enjoyed most about your role and that outreach that you do to the community?
Yes, there's definitely a lot of outreach, and because I started so late, because I where I am right now, I started late. There's only been a little bit of outreach, but I have loved it so much, and I think it's something I always wanted to do when I would go to resource fairs or when people would come into my school.
Hmm.
Um, One of the highlights I've enjoyed is going to high schools and actually telling students about these programs, right? I recently was at Los Angeles Leadership Academy and I did a workshop. I mean, I did a presentation on what our program is and how students can benefit. I tabled at Mecha de Ramona High School's Cruising for College event, telling students about our program. And it's been nice to connect with students in a different way. And
Hmm.
the way I also feel like I'm doing what I wanted to do when I was in high school, right? Like
Yeah,
exposing students to the possibilities after high school and saying, if you join our program now, you can start thinking about what you want to do
that's
and just
awesome.
kind of planting the seed, right? Planting the seed of what the possibilities are.
So as you reflect on your career, and I know you said like even in high school you were thinking about doing this type of work, as now you see it come to fruition, is it what you expected?
Yes, but I didn't know it was going to be so much work, right? I'm like, wow, there is so much that goes into this, like the preparation, or even sometimes like, so my job is very flexible. I don't have it's not a 9 to 5, which
Hmm.
is unfortunate. It's good and bad at the same time because you really have to know how to prioritize your time or organize your
Sure,
time.
sure.
But I'm definitely working late nights, right? Because I'm meeting with volunteers and they're professionals, so they have a 9 to 5. So I'm
Yeah,
adjusting my schedule. I didn't consider that I would be working weekends. So, now my Saturday mornings or my Sunday mornings are completely different. But it's definitely just been an adjustment to the type of work that I'm
for
doing.
sure. Hmm.
But it definitely is still so purposeful, still so meaningful to me because I get to connect with parents, with teachers, with community leaders, and just tell them about the importance of our program and why they should invest in us and also expose other students to our work.
That's amazing. What do you
Mhm.
see yourself doing 5 to 10 years from now? Are you going to be doing the same work or is it going to change, you think?
I don't know, Juan. I think this is where I'm very like, where am I going? Because previously, before I started this role, I was gonna be a teacher. I gave myself my timeline was to work at Trio Scholars until 2027 because I wanted to leave the same time the cohort that I started with left,
Uh-huh.
right? So 4 years, and then I wanted to pursue my teaching credential.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I wanted to save enough money because I mean, if when you're a teacher, you have to not work, right? You have to
Oh,
commit
yeah,
to
yeah,
that. And I had to prepare myself financially. So that was my goal to become a teacher. But I think now that I've transitioned into this role of nonprofit work, now I'm thinking like like this is a career role now. Like
oh,
my
for
boss
sure.
had mentioned it, like Evelyn, I want to build you up. I want to make sure that, you can take over my job if needed. So
Wow.
now I'm thinking like, where am I gonna be? And do I still want to go back and work at a high school setting? So I'm still in that reflective mode from where I see myself.
Transitioning into this next question wonderfully because now that you've experienced being a student in college, what advice do you have for TRIO students listening to this podcast, whether they're in Upward Bound, Student Support Services, McNair, or those students like in the Educational Opportunity Centers who are thinking about returning to college or maybe being a non-traditional student returning to college?
Yes. I want to say to make it general, right? Because there's so many different trio students is just trust yourself, right? Trust yourself and your capabilities and stay true to you. And I think that's something that I've learned throughout my 4 years,
Hmm.
throughout my 8 years of being a trio student, but as a professional as well, is just staying true to yourself and knowing your capabilities, because once you know what you're capable of, you're able to move forward. And one of the things I do want to share as well is that for a lot of trio students, um, I know for a lot of students in general, right? We're always told find a mentor, find a mentor. And it's so important to find a mentor, but sometimes you can't find one. And I think that's my story. Like I was never able to find a mentor, regardless for whatever reason. It's like tap into your community, right? Tap into your friends who are also going through the same thing. Talk to your trio advisor because you know they're gonna listen, right? And ask them for help in that sense. But tap into your community, reach out to those who are surrounding you. And again, just staying true to yourself, because once you're changing who you are, to fit a mold, it can only hurt you.
So, and another great question because, or one great answer to the student portion of it, but now transitioning into the professional part because, again, you were a trio professional.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for trio professionals listening to this podcast?
For true professionals, I would say this is definitely passion work,
For sure,
right?
right?
Yes, yes. And working in trio, I can tell you, I poured my heart and soul into all of my students. Like I look
Absolutely.
forward to meeting them every single day. And I know
Hmm.
there's a lot of trio professionals who do the same thing because I experienced them, right? But being able to listen and not dismissing students when they're asking you for help. Because I know for myself, it wasn't with trio professionals, but when I would ask for help for other, either whether it be professionals or other staff on campus, I often got dismissed, right? Like, oh, you got this, you can do this. And I think with Trio, students are coming to you because they feel that comfort and they feel that support since they're meeting with you maybe every semester, every quarter,
Hmm.
going to programs. You have become a familiar face to them, and
Hmm.
they feel comfortable asking you for help and sharing certain stories. And I think it's knowing that you're there to serve them and you're there to help them, right? And it's passion work ultimately.
Absolutely. Using only one word, describe yourself.
Amazing.
Amazing. I like it. I like it. Very good. Why amazing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think just because when I dedicate myself to something, I try to do it well. This is also probably a first gen thing, right? Like no mistakes, you can't do something
Oh,
wrong.
yeah. Expecting
Um,
perfection. Yeah.
Yes, but I think that when I put myself in settings, I do great work, right? I'm able to connect, to relate to people, and I don't try to fit this mo professionalism mold. I try to just be myself. I didn't speak Spanglish during here. I think it's just because it's going so well, but to me, when I speak Spanglish, that's when I feel more comfortable and more relaxed, and I'm able to relate to a lot more students, or in a sense where they start speaking Spanish to me, and it just feels so great, right? Because now you're in familiarity, you're in community. So I say amazing because I feel like I do a lot of great work, and a lot of people have described me to enjoy my energy or my passion or my optimism when they're around me, and they can just feel that they're also excited. And my students have shared, like every time I meet with you, I leave so enlightened because someone believes in me.
That's awesome. I love
Mhm.
that. What are you currently listening to, watching, or reading?
Yes. I recently went to the Julian Alvarez concert
Hmm.
um in the SoFi Stadium. Has been my favorite art, a very big artist for me since I was young. But that's what I'm currently listening to. I listen to a lot of banda. I'm trying to expand my music. So I've heard a lot about Kendrick Lamar. So I'm just
Mm.
putting him on shuffle on my Spotify. In terms of watching, what I'm watching right now, I watch Abbott Elementary.
Oh, I
That's a
love
family
Abbott
show,
Elementary.
and
Yeah.
also the 911 show on
Hmm.
ABC. That I've been very good watching it since 2018 it came out. So
Wow.
that's what I'm watching. And reading, I want to start reading more. I haven't read a book since my master's program 2 years ago. So I'm definitely trying to catch up on reading, and I have a list already. So it's just getting to it and making time for that.
Absolutely. Well, Evelyn, we're at the end of this podcast. It has been a pleasure to have you on Let's Talk Trio so you could share your trio journey. I hope to have you on again soon. I think that there's deeper discussions that we can have about education, mentorship, and all that. So hopefully you're open to returning with us again.
Yes, of course. These are conversations I love having because I know as first gens, we've experienced it all in different ways, right? First gens who've experienced amazing education and others who haven't, who have had great mentors and others who haven't. And I just love hearing different perspectives and stories because it also opens my mind to what else is out there.
Absolutely. We have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guest sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Of course. So, hi everyone. My name is Evelin Castañeda, graduate of UC Riverside, and Cal Baptist University, and I currently serve as a program coordinator. So excited and happy that you have all been listening. And with that being said, Trio works.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a Trio program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk Trio. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk Trio. We want to get your story to the public.
You just heard from our guest, Evelin Castañeda, Trio alum and project coordinator for the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Project Incorporated. Thank you, Evelin, for being on the podcast and for sharing your Trio journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Once again, a heartfelt thanks to our individual supporters, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jeff Nepudi, Angelica Valdez, Rosario Riley, Felicia Rivera, Eric Lamaster, Jeff Calden, and Jaded Electronics. Thank you to our corporate sponsors, TrioJoblist.com, Nosotros Education Center, Longsdale Publishing, Student Access, and The Trio Store, powered by Proforma. Visit www.thetriostore.com, your source for Trio graduation stoles. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the Let's Talk Trio podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base level starts at $1 a month. Become a corporate sponsor by placing an ad on the podcast. Contact us for details. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our business handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. Be sure to follow the Let's Talk Trio podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. This episode was recorded Friday, April 25th, 2025. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.